he should invoke the militia statutes under the Constitution and under the statutes of Idaho, call out the militia, close the borders of Idaho, and so people can be tested if they are illegal aliens or if they demonstrably have COVID on the spot. They should be kept out of Idaho.
Welcome to Idaho Speaks, the place to learn about candidates and issues important to Idaho. My name is Ed, and I created this channel to overcome the media bias that plagues our communities and our state. When presented all the information, I believe you, the voter, will make the best decision for our future. At Idaho Speaks, we will give you the side of the story being hidden by mainstream media and big tech giants. Idaho Speaks, your issues, your candidates, your state. Welcome to Idaho Speaks. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to the folks who have been submitting questions and comments via our Facebook page and email. We have received several comments about agriculture and ranching and the recent California law restricting pork that goes into effect in January. I'm working on a series for ranching that will air soon. Today, Art Macomber is back in studio to talk about a very important issue. First, let me frame this discussion a little bit. During a state emergency, the governor can declare a state of emergency that in turn frees up federal resources to help with, recovery. Those emergency powers really put the governor in a lead position that allows him or her, I hope, to act both as the state's chief executive and provide some legislative powers too. Idaho law says emergency powers are to end no more than 60 days from issuance and allow powers to revert back to the legislators. Now, back in March of 2020, Governor Little declared a state of emergency in response to the COVID pandemic. Now let me stop right there and say up until that point, I fully agreed with what the governor had done. While there might have been some nuances one could argue with, in early March, we really didn't know much about this virus. And early reports were that it could be the most deadly virus since the 1918 Spanish flu. Some reports out of the CDC were the communicability rate could be even higher than the Spanish flu. So I certainly do not fault the governor from positioning Idaho early on to receive any and all federal assistance. But by early May, however, it was clear this virus was most severe for seniors and people with extreme comorbidities. Younger people with no health issues were faring the virus, much like the seasonal flu. Children were not immune to the bug, but it became clear that their immune systems were best equipped to withstand the attack by this microorganism. As June rolled around, many in Congress were asking the governor to end the emergency declaration and return power to the legislators. Here we are, August of 2021, and I don't think the emergency has been ended. But I am not a legal scholar, and thus I asked my friend Art Macomber, candidate for Idaho Attorney General, to share his thoughts on the subject. Art, thank you for coming back to talk with Idaho Speaks. So what say you? Where does the state stand with the emergency declaration by the governor?
Good afternoon, Ed. The state is still in a state of emergency. As you recall, last year, Governor Little just ignored the 60-day time frame found in Sentence 2 of Idaho Code 46-1008, and he just kept it going. So here we are, still alive in the state of emergency, and we don't know when it's going to end. Certainly, the governor should be putting an end to it. Now, if there is no end to it, then I have some ideas about what he should be doing. But I have a sense that this whole COVID thing isn't quite as serious as they say it is, because certainly the governor has the power to do more.
Well, I think rightly so. He left it to local municipalities and authorities to decide how they were going to handle masks, vaccination, and that sort of stuff. And again, we could dig into the minutia and pick apart little things here or there. But in general, I agree with the idea of, letting the local municipalities handle their own issues. I believe in less government, but that's me. The fact that the governor is holding on to these powers, is that something that people should be concerned with?
Where I come from, there's an old saying, it's called fish or cut bait. And I think in this instance, it's the same thing. Either end the emergency or do something more. Now, what we're being told is that even the hospitals and various employers are saying, you get this shot or you don't work here. Okay, that's pretty bold.
That's pretty extreme.
I mean, those people they're not only licensed professionals, but they have skill sets. They know the corporate process. They understand what's going on.
Now, one could argue, why would the medical professionals who understand the epidemiology far better than you and I would, why are they not 100% vaccinated?
Well, and this is part of the problem. The medical profession, as relates to this COVID situation, has undermined themselves, in my view, over the last year. Because one day, everybody wears masks. There was a time when I think Dr. Fauci said, well, you should wear 2 masks. I mean, it just got silly. And then they said, well, you don't have to wear masks. And the CDC is flip-flopping like an old trout out of the Salmon River. I mean, you don't know what they're going to say tomorrow. And this is just bad. So if the governor looks at all of this, and I'm sure he has better information than I do or you do, then he should just end the state of emergency and say, look, we've got it under control. Things are good. But he won't. And so the other side is you shouldn't just let it sit there. What you ought to do is do something. And what would that be? Because let's face it, the state of Idaho has something called the police power. It is actually something that the federal government does not have. And every state sovereign has this, so the state of Idaho can exercise. And it's really all about health, safety, and nuisance. And in this case, it's obviously health. The people that have taken the shot will say, well, it's also for safety. And then other people will even say, well, you're a nuisance if you don't get the shot. So, I mean, I think in some way you could argue that all three of it covers. There's an exercise of the police power. And let's look at what power the governor has. Under the Militia Act, we always start with the Constitution, but so section or Article 14 of the Constitution has the militia in there, and it actually says at Section 1 that all able-bodied male persons between the ages of 18 and 45 shall be enrolled in the militia. So I don't know if you signed up recently, Ed. I think both of us are over 45.
Yeah,
but
I'm past that point, sure.
I mean, are the kids signing up? I mean, do they sign up in high school? I know that
Well, doesn't that happen when we sign up for the selective service? I mean, when I was 18, I went to the post office and I signed up for the selective service. I'm sure you did too.
So maybe that works for Idaho. I don't know if it's, maybe that's only for the federal government and not for the state government. I don't know. It's a good question. And the Constitution says, unless you have some conscientious scruples against bearing arms, then you'll be compelled to perform duty under the militia in time of peace. I mean, so holy cow, you got to get involved. And then it says, if you don't enroll because of those conscientious scruples, then you actually have to make a payment into the school fund in the county in which you're a resident. The equivalent of money, the amount and matter and payment to be fixed by law. So then we go to the statutes. And of course, the militia statutes are Title 46 of Idaho Code. And this is what Governor Little used last year. He said, okay, I am going to proclaim a state of extreme emergency. That's what he did under Title 46, Section 601 allows him to do so. but he did not proclaim martial law. So he proclaimed the emergency, but he didn't make us live under a state of martial law, although many people felt like it, going home and you can't go to church, you can't go to work. I mean,
well, and I think a lot of listeners are kind of confused. Okay, so on one hand, he declared the emergency, and I'm sure that was early on to receive federal funds. But to the best of my knowledge, Idaho's not taking any federal funds. We've turned down the extra dollars for unemployment because our workers weren't going back to work. There hasn't been any more state-level stimulus money that has been distributed that I know of. Them, if you're listening and you know of other money that's come to Idaho, send an email, hello@idahospeaks.com, and I'll make sure and publish an addendum in a future episode. But he didn't take a position from a gubernatorial standpoint to say, thou shalt wear masks, thou shalt stay home, thou shalt get a vaccine. He didn't call out the National Guard to serve as clinicians or medical aides at the local hospital. Again, not that I know of.
Nope.
So what did he do?
Never heard of that. Well, he basically made a bunch of mandates about people's behavior that he wasn't empowered by law to do. And I discussed that in a memo I shared with the legislature last year. And then the question arose, well, gosh, do we still get federal funds if Governor Little terminates the emergency? And it turns out, based on Idaho code, the emergency in Idaho was actually declared by President Trump, who declared it a national emergency, and that triggered a state contract with FEMA, which we are still operating under, to my knowledge, which funnels federal funds through FEMA to the emergency responding forces here in Idaho that we already have set up.
And that's what pays for the vaccines, the extra supplies, the ventilators, all of that emergency processing stuff or medical processing gear that our hospitals are in desperate need
the emergency management system.
Right. That doesn't go through the state at all. That goes directly to the emergency processing systems, the health system.
Well, what happens is the governor is in charge of emergency management in the state of Idaho, but there are groups run through the local counties. So all 44 counties have a group like this, and the funds come in from the federal government pursuant to the FEMA contract, and then they go through the state government and get allocated to all the counties for whatever they need to respond to whatever the emergency is.
But that would come whether the governor had declared a state of emergency or not, correct?
Only if the president had declared it, which President Trump did at the time.
And President Biden has not superseded.
I don't believe he has, although I got to tell you, the man is busy. He's issued 52 executive orders as of last week. And, President Obama at this point was only in the low 30s, and same with George Bush. I mean, President Biden has been the busiest issuer of executive orders, and no, I haven't read them all.
Maybe we should be worrying about carpal tunnel, but that's another podcast episode here. So the governor has the option to call out the National Guard to help with emergency care and health and safety of the citizens of Idaho, correct?
It seems to me, Ed, that we can't silo this issue. We can't just pretend, well, this week it's the hospitals requiring it, and next week it's Simplot that's requiring it, and next week it's somebody else that's requiring it, and oh, gee, they're a private business, a public. I think what we need to do is take a look at a lot of issues that are hitting Idaho, and let's just take one for example. Everyone knows that President Biden has opened the southern border, and everybody and their brother who can make it to any point of land in South America is now traveling north to come to the United States. And when they get there, the federal government is unable to control them or unwilling to control them. The INS is completely overwhelmed. The ICE folks, they have no idea how to handle it. And so what they're doing is, in many cases, they're shipping illegal immigrants with whatever kind of medical problems, social problems, psychological problems, educational deficits, you name it, men, women, and children. They're putting them on buses and planes and shipping them throughout the United States and dumping them en masse. And I use the word dumping because that's what they're doing. They bring them to a locality and they just let them off the bus. And in some cases, they're actually paying for hotels to put these people up for X amount of time, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So when I look at that and I see the state of Idaho is obviously still in a state of emergency, the governor will not revoke it. Here's what I think Governor Little should do if he's not going to terminate the emergency. I think what he should do is he should call out the Idaho militia and set up checkpoints at every single road that comes into the state of Idaho and stop all traffic and check to see if this is a citizen coming in or not. If it's an illegal alien, they should be kept out. Now, I don't recommend that he try to test every citizen for COVID at the border, although there might be temperature checks to see if they're sick at the moment. But my understanding is to determine if someone for sure has COVID, you have to give them a blood test.
Now, if I remember correctly, back in late March, when the shutdown was happening, late March of 2020, the country was shut down and everybody who entered the airports, all of the citizens, even the foreign nationals that were coming in, they were tested. They had temperature checks. If they were going to interact with anybody, they had COVID tests. If they were going to come in for vacation, they even had to quarantine. Are you saying that the illegal aliens that are coming in from our southern border are not being tested by the federal government before they enter into our state?
I don't believe they are. And furthermore, I have no idea if Governor Little or anyone for the state of Idaho is protecting the health and safety of Idaho citizens by making sure that infected people are not coming into Idaho.
Okay, so now I've said on this program I'm not a boat enthusiast, but this gets me to thinking here. This probably has no parallel. Again, if those of you who are listening saying, "Come on, Ed, you're out to lunch," go ahead, write me hello@idahospeaks.com. But before a boat can be brought into the state of Idaho, they have to stop at the weigh station at the border and have their ballast or their billets checked and their hull checked for little nasties, right?
Well, Idaho has check stations all over the state. If you bring a boat into Idaho, they look for New Zealand mud snail. They look for Eurasian water milfoil. They look for hydrilla. In other words, they look for a number of invasive species because we don't want invasive species coming into our waterways.
Right. And that would come.
Well,
that would wreak havoc.
I'm an environmental Republican. I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, cleaning up this stuff. If you go out to Lake Fernan or go out to some of the beautiful lakes in North Idaho and otherwise, you'll see what happened when these invasive species start to take over, and it's quite expensive to root them out. And so, look, I'm not saying that illegal aliens are invasive species, but are they not spreading disease in Idaho where they could be stopped? I think they should be stopped.
Well, I mean, so if we take this to a human level, I know, again, some people are going to say, "Come on, Ed, your boat analogy is out to lunch there." But at the human level, I can't go to Kootenai County Hospital without being forced to wear a mask. Some of the workers, in fact, I think all of the workers now are required to take an experimental shot, something I took. I openly admit I took the vaccine. I have a comorbidity that if I got COVID, I would not have fared well. So I made a choice to take the shot. I believed when President Trump signed the law, right to try, he was signing a law for experimental drugs. And I was applauding that move. And in the spirit of that law, I took it upon myself to take that experimental medication. But now We've got businesses that are requiring their employees to take this experimental medication for the protection and the health and safety of all of the people they come into contact. Why wouldn't we do the same thing for the illegal aliens that are coming into our state?
And I hereby call on Governor Little to immediately either stop and close off the emergency that he declared last year, which is way beyond statutory power, and just recognize that it's done and that things are under control in Idaho, or he should invoke the militia statutes under the Constitution and under the statutes of Idaho, call out the militia, close the borders of Idaho, and so people can be tested if they are illegal aliens or if they demonstrably have COVID on the spot. They should be kept out of Idaho. And if he doesn't do that by, say, August 20, then I would call on all the able-bodied males to man the roads in their own counties. There's 44 counties. If you live in a county in Idaho, you know which roads come in and out of your counties. So man the barricades, stop the traffic, and force everyone and keep the illegal aliens out that are sick. If they're illegal aliens, of course, you can detain them and then turn them over to ICE. I wish we had buses. We could ship them to Washington, D.C., because that's really where they belong.
Or Portland or Seattle or one of these states that really like that stuff.
I don't think Idaho should be sending illegal immigrants to other states. I think they should be sending them to Washington, D.C., because it's Washington, D.C. that is not controlling the southern border.
That's right. They created this problem.
But certainly Governor Little can control the Idaho borders. And if he can't, then what the Constitution says, that all political power is inherent in the people, and we should defend ourselves. If this crisis is what Governor Little says it is, then he should protect the people of Idaho now, or the people of Idaho should protect themselves. And that's the bottom line.
And to synthesize this point that Art is making, and you're hearing it here, a candidate running to become our next Attorney General is suggesting that Governor Little either end the emergency powers or do something about it. And if he doesn't, then the citizens should step up and do something about it. He used the constitutional powers under the Militia Act in order to declare this emergency. So we're not going out on a limb here saying this is something that's just kind of harebrained. This is the way Idaho works, right?
Well, that's what the Constitution and the laws say. And I think the governor needs to either, like I say, fish or cut bait. It's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. Well, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners? How do they get in touch with your campaign?
Obviously, they can go to Macomber4Idaho.com, which is MACOMBER Idaho.com. We are putting together an issues sheet for that, even though the AG office is not supposed to be a policy maker, but a law clarifier, if you will. On the other hand, people want to know where I stand on certain things, and so that will be coming soon. In any case, we look forward to people helping with the campaign, and we look forward to people donating to the campaign. These statewide races are very expensive, and I don't want to run out of gas in the middle of, the craters of the moon or, something like that. I mean, let's just keep it going. Otherwise, people should write to you or write to me off the website and get in touch with what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, folks. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you've got some questions and you'd like to ask any candidate, whether it be Art or anyone running for any office, send an email to hello@idahospeaks.com, or you could go on Facebook and ask your question, and I will make sure to reach out to the candidate and get your question answered. Thank you so much, Art.
All right. Thank you, Ed.
We've reached the end of the episode, but not the end of the issue. Please share this episode with your friends and family. If you have questions or would like to share your own issues and ideas, visit www.idahospeaks.com and click Share an Issue. Your state, your voice. Idaho Speaks.